Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, John.
I believe your entrance is just given us quorum now, so we're in good shape. Oh, and it just turned to 10. So good morning, everyone. We'll call to order right at 10 o'clock, and we'll start off by recognizing that we're conducting our meeting today on the territories, primarily on the territories of the Kupetchesut and Tishant First Nations, as that's where our offices are located here in Port Alberni in the Valley. However, since this is a hybrid meeting, we are also coming to you live from likely New Channel, Coast Salish, the Lekwungen-speaking people's territories and beyond. So with that in mind, I will remind everyone that we're conducting our meeting in a hybrid format. That means that we have people in the office here today, as well as people online. I won't introduce the people online since it's very easy to see. However, in the office, we have our Vice Chair and Director, Debbie Haggard. We have Director and Mayor Marilyn McEwen. We have President and Director Penny Cody, as well as Councillor and Director Cindy Silva, and Director for Beaver Creek, Susan Roth. As well for the staff, we have Daniel, Mike Erg, Terry, Wendy, and Willa. Okay. All right. With that in mind, though, I believe that is it. We are conducting our business online, which means that we're streaming our website, but also through YouTube. However, we are not monitoring the YouTube chat, nor are we monitoring the chat or the questions being conducted on the panel discussion by Zoom, which is what we're using to meet today. But we are monitoring the email address that is responses@acrd.bc.ca, and that will be the way in which, at the end of our agenda, we'll be able to look and see if there are any comments or questions during question period, at least from outside of the gallery. So I'm not certain that Gliv is sticking around to have any comments later. With that in mind, we can move into the approval of the agenda. I don't believe we have any items to add, nor do we have any new pieces of material to add either. So I think it would be appropriate to have a motion to adopt the agenda. Thank you, Director Silva, seconded by Director Roth. Okay, any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us into petitions, delegations, and presentations. We only have the one today from Ms. Willa Thorpe, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Heritage for the City of Port Alberni. This is regarding the McLean Mill. Normally we have 10 minutes, so if I hold up 2 fingers or 1 finger, I am not interrupting you. I'm just telling you how much time you got. If it doesn't look like you're close to being the end of your presentation, I may pause you and get a motion from the floor to continue on to the end, although I don't expect it to really get into that point. So welcome and thank you. Hopefully you'll be able to use that microphone.
Thank you, Chair Jack. So further to the Board of Directors of the ACRD is further to your request. I'm here representing the City of Port Alberni to chat with you this morning about some background on the ACRD's grant and aid program or investment contribution to the McLean Mill National Historic Site. And so from a history standpoint, so the at the ACRD, so historically, in your financial plan since 2010, at least, the ACRD has provided an annual contribution of $30,000. And the city has also included $30,000 in each of our annual financial plans as well. We also leverage, so the city leverages the $60,000 that's provided by the ACRD in the city to apply each year to Parks Canada for their cost sharing grant. And so Parks Canada provides a matching grant of $60,000. So we applied to this grant every year, and we were successful in 2018 and 2019. So you can see there's on your screens there, that's a breakdown of the 2 years we were successful in the grant. So in 2018, we completed a baseline condition assessment. And so some folks around the table would be familiar with the John Dam report we often refer to it as. And so what that report did in 2018 was it detailed the current condition of all of the assets. It also determined what the needs would be for those built assets or structures at the McLean Mill. It also helped us prioritize what the conservation requirements might be, because of course, in a National Historic Site, this isn't just a park. For a National Historic Site, you need to replace like for like. So you'll notice that I'll show some images here where there's brand new structures now, but they are meant to appear old, essentially. And so meaning that the mill is focused on sort of a circa 1953 look at the site, and that's the responsibility for us, the city, is to maintain that same look. So we can't, so when folks say, well, why wouldn't you just replace with tin roofs and all the rest of it? Because that is not historically accurate. So also in 2018, with that baseline condition assessment, it's enabled us to build a conservation plan. And so we've prepared it for the site. So that assessment then has driven all of our work we've done since. So essentially, it's almost like a menu of the work we complete. You'll see in 2020 that the program was oversubscribed with Parks Canada. So we were not successful in our grant application in 2020 or 2022. In 2021, the program was unavailable. So Parks Canada did not run their cost sharing program in 2021. And in 2023, so the current grant cycle, we submitted our application in January, and we're just waiting to hear what the result of that might be. The timeline that typically works with Parks Canada is that the projects need to be complete between April the 1st and December 31st in the same year. So if we're successful for grant funds in 2023, any work we do that would be eligible would happen between that April 1 and December 31 of this year. So it's quite a tight window. And so some of the completed projects, when I mentioned that this is what the ACRD's investment and what's the city's investment, well, what kind of good work has happened there? So a few examples of projects that we've completed from the Grants and Aid program with the ACRD. So up on the screen here is the Arnold McLean Garage. So you can see the before and after photos there, a significant improvement. And also you can see in the picture on the left there where there's the barn doors are sort of leaning up against the side of the barn there, that ability to reenact those garage doors. So again, we don't take them away and replace with new. How can we refurbish what's already there? Another example is the worker house. So this is another before and after shot of another project that was done recently. And then 3 of the roofs that I mentioned previously that were done. So we've got the cookhouse on the top left, the main garage on the top right, and the bottom middle there is the worker house. So it's quite a fascinating process when you look to try to replace these shingles, for instance. We had a discussion with one supplier out of the UK that we're trying to get these hexagonal green shingles, and there was one supplier on the entire earth. And they said, we'd be pleased to sell you a container full of pallet where we needed, a couple of pallets full of shingles. And so there's following the guidelines of restoration of heritage places in Canada is very specific guidelines. So again, it may seem inefficient when we're saying, well, if you're replacing roofs, why would we use a different type of material? Again, the theme is we must follow the rights and standards and the guidelines, meaning that it has to be period specific. So one of the things that you won't see in these images is that we work behind the scenes to actually hide good business practice. So in the example of the Arnold McLean Garage, we actually raised that garage. We put concrete footings, which would not have been period specific. We can get away with that practice because what we're able to do is hide that good new work that's more structurally sound than it would have been in the 50s, and then make the rest appear. So from the aesthetic is true to form of the period, and also how can we integrate good building practices that are current that will help ensure that that garage stays structurally sound and standing. So upcoming projects. So when we refer to projects that, okay, so what happens now, Willow, if the ACRD continues to support, what types of projects would you be looking at? So in the future, so one is the transformer pen, just to bring folks, so we're talking this transformer pen here. So this is the sawmill here, and then the transformer pen would be another project we're looking to undertake. So again, not confirmed at this point until we know we've got the city. Of course, we're working through our financial plan currently, as is the ACRD, but these are the projects we've got earmarked. Another project as well is the log haul. So when we're talking about, so we've got our dip pond here, and then when the raw logs will be coming up the log haul here. This is a side view here where you can see where it's starting to rot out quite significantly. So this image here is actually the side of the log haul there. Okay. The other thing before I jump into the non-historic zone I wanted to mention is that you folks may be aware that we at the city are exploring replacing our septic system currently that exists at the mill. And so I just wanted to make sure that the ACRD Board of Directors were aware that project is funded strictly by city resources. So that's not part of the cost sharing program. That's not part of the ACRD's grant and aid contribution. The ACRD's contribution goes specifically to those built structures as I've outlined previously. So switching gears a little bit to the non-historic zone. So you'll see on the map here, the black outline there, that indicates the line of everything within the black circle there is considered the historic zone, and everything exterior to it is the non-historic zone. So when I talk about working on projects and keeping things like for like and how we work, that's specific to the historic zone and the requirement of being a National Historic Site. You'll notice outside the historic zone, we've got things like the fish hatchery is here, and then we've got the main buildings you see there that are the gift shop and the grand hall and those sorts of buildings. So again, those are not historic per se. So part of the site, but not considered part of the historic zone. And so as far as the non-historic zone, it includes the visitor center, the gift shop, the office, the courtyard, the parking lots, and then the treed area that's bound by the courtyard, the parking lots, the train tracks, and then the historic zone. So with that said, so in January 2020, the city entered into a 3-year agreement with the Alberta Valley Chamber of Commerce to manage the non-historic zone. So just to be clear that the Chamber's responsibilities are the non-historic zone, as I've mentioned, and then city staff, our facilities folks, and our heritage department staff are in control of everything that lives within the historic zone to ensure that it's crystal clear as far as what the realm or scope of responsibility is. So we're currently discussing a renewal of this agreement with the Chamber. And so that's in process currently. And so the Chamber they run a variety of special events and programs on site. There's a coming, the McLean Mill Run that's happening. There's weddings, there's camping, there's e-bike tours. I'm not sure if the board is aware. There's electronic bikes that are available for rent, and actually the SEAT program is a program that the Chamber runs that is actually free of charge for tours for active agers, I would call them. Some people call them seniors, but I would call them active agers. And so those types of programs, the Chamber is responsible for. So to that end, I'd be pleased to answer any questions that the board might have.
Thank you very much. Could you end the presentation?
Of course.
Just so it's easier to see the folks online. So I have Dr. Ross and then Dr. Boyko.
I believe it was, oops, sorry. I was just wondering, you said that the camping area was in the historic zone, but the Chamber would be responsible for camping?
So the Chamber is currently exploring camping, yes.
But that's in the historic zone.
Yes, portions of our belief, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Boyko and then Dr. Cote.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions. Is there any plans to get the mill back up and running at all? Because I saw it running. I took my 2-year-old son to see it running. He barely remembers it. Is there any plans at all to get it up and running? And I have a follow-up after that.
So through the chair, at this stage, there's not a published plan to get the steam sawmill running again. So the boiler, as part of the sawmill, is not currently functioning. And so at this point, I couldn't speculate on a timeline, but from the city's standpoint, we do not have a specific timeline of when we see that mill operational. If it were a viable option, I would love to explore it, but at this point, it has not been planned for enough.
Thank you for the clarification. With regard to the camping system, so I've been trying to book a place there since October, and I tried actually 2 minutes ago here. You cannot book a campsite anytime between now and the end of middle of next year. The reservation system is broken. So I wonder, I've been trying to do it for months. So is anyone actually checking the Chamber of Commerce on how they're operating things? Because there's a huge problem with actually booking a site. I've actually tried to phone the number. No one picks up the phone. So the reservation system is broken. Thank you.
Yeah, so through the chair, I'd be happy to follow up with the Chamber of Commerce on that, provide that feedback to them to see what the system is. I'm not sure if they have advertised at this stage that camping is or is not available and what that timeline is, but I'd be happy to follow up.
They say it's open on the website and everything like that, but it does not. Thank you. So there's a huge revenue loss happening right now.
Okay, thank you for that. Dr. Cote?
Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you, Will. A great presentation. A big fan of McLean Mill, always have been. I own a historic building as well, and I know that the restraints of trying to rehabilitate a building. So job really well done, and like to keep supporting. Just a question around the train. Is the train going to be running to McLean Mill again? Thanks.
So similar. So through the chair, similar to my discussion about the running the steam sawmill again. At this point, it is not scheduled. However, I'm working with our local Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society volunteers, discussing about what the future might look like. Also, this table may be familiar that with the train station, we're working with potential proponents there to occupy the train station. One of the so the train station, just to give folks context, that it's a terminus location of where the train might run coming into town, and so going from that location out to McLean Mill. And so one of the requirements of the proponents that may be exploring occupying the train station is that they have the ability to facilitate train tickets. So meaning they, if and when we're running trains again, they can facilitate, public washroom access, selling train tickets, having folks disembark and get on and off the train, that sort of thing. So I would love to see trains running in this town, yes. And at this stage, there's not a specific line item in our city budget as far as what that might look like. And what I've tasked our local groups with is, let's build a viable plan. And when those folks can approach me and provide me with, here's what the long-term plan might be for trains to be sustainable, I would love to be bringing that to my city council to have that fulsome discussion.
Thank you. Thanks for that explanation. I'd really like to see that train happening again. I think it's a wonderful offering. People come from all over the world to ride that train and check out the McLean Mill. So I believe that heritage explains who we are, where we came from, and it's important that we all preserve that. Thanks.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I've also touched base with Santa Claus about the Santa trains that have been running historically. He has indicated his great desire to return to providing service at Christmas time out to the mill. So I look forward to working with Mr. Claus on some options there as well.
Great to hear. Thank you very much. Are there any further comments or questions? Okay, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. Okay. One thing I neglected to state is, on behalf of Huwait, I'm taking, because I'm the acting chief counselor while Robert is away on annual leave. I'm taking a meeting with a federal minister at 11. So I'm going to step out at 10:45 to make sure that all works. Hopefully, Deb, you can take over for half an hour. I'll be lucky if I get a half an hour, but seems like it's probably a good idea to try to take advantage of the March rush. So I apologize, but that was the only time that they had. And it is technically 2 p.m. for them over there. So, okay, so the next item we have is a follow-up regarding the draft 2023-2027 financial plan. And since Terry is already sitting, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so we broke this into 3 reports today just because we felt like one massive report was maybe a bit daunting. They're not really in any particular order. These are kind of the remaining pieces that we haven't discussed at a smaller committee level regarding the plan. So I will start with kind of all the follow-up stuff that's come out of all these other meetings, and then we can move into the grant and aids, and then we'll talk about region-wide services. Interesting part about today is whatever changes you guys make this morning, we'll have a draft resolution to do during first reading this afternoon, because we're also hoping to give first reading to the bylaw today. So we will make sure we reflect that at that time. So as you know, we made a presentation on February 9th and presented the entire proposed plan. We've had meeting after meeting and community consultation regarding the plan. Daniel and I were actually out at the District of Hewlett last night. Thanks for hosting us for an open house there. So now we're just trying to wrap everything up. I guess the other part that I'd like to talk about is the announcement from the province on Friday about the 1.8 million that we are going to get of that new grant funding. And the fact that we don't have necessarily the parameters of that funding yet. So still waiting to hear that. So we have not reflected any changes in this proposed plan based on that funding because we just don't have enough information at this time. So I'll just run through these very briefly just so that we can make sure if we want to talk about any of them that we can. At the electoral area directors meeting, we talked about the Great Central Lake Boat Launch project, which is one of the Canada Community Build Fund projects. So just to state that this project really hasn't been fully developed yet. It is on the work plan for discussion. Part of that discussion will be whether this stays a community amenity or whether it's something that the board would like to consider to put into regional parks. So prior to actually designing what this upgrade will look like or this development will look like, we need to have a governance discussion. And since we just got that last bit of funding for the West Coast multi-use path, that is timing, well, good for timing because we need to discuss that service anyways. In terms of the Vancouver Island Regional Library, there was a motion passed at that meeting just to provide some history of the last 5 years levies and the impact to the regional district of those and look forward for the next 5 years. So I have provided that information. Director Beckett's nodding his head, so that's good. Custom transit. So custom transit, we had a proposal for the Handy Dart service in the Alberni Valley to expand in September. The province has not matched their side of the funding, so we have removed that cost, that additional cost from the service. So it did result in a tax reduction of approximately $11,000 in 2023. We have left it in for 2024. So we're making the assumption that the expansion will proceed next year, but obviously we will discuss that again then. This will cause a dip in the requisition slightly by $11,000, which can be offset next year by the rate stabilization reserve. But I did put an option in there if the directors didn't want the requisition to fall, that we could do an $11,000 contribution to the rate stabilization reserve. Staff feel like because of the overall budget and the increases that are there and the fact that we already have a reserve that's been sitting for a couple of years, we don't actually recommend the board do that, but we have provided that as an option. The McLean's Mill Grant and Aid. So that was discussed at the Alberni Valley and Banfield Services Committee. And at that time, we had decided to invite Willa to come and speak about the activities. So I've just circled back on that one in case there's any changes the directors would like to make. In terms of Banfield's facing a very high tax increase this year. And I know Director Beckett has been looking at all of the options as to if we can address any of that. So we did decide to reduce the contribution to capital this year by 20,000 just to help out the community in that case. In terms of the Banfield water system, Director Beckett had also been considering reducing the proposed parcel tax increase, but when he met with the committee, they've actually decided to keep it in, that they need the infrastructure money and it was just delaying time. So that is still in there. Sprout Lake Community Park, just a small change. They have a project to their basketball court, so they've asked for that capital project to be increased from 10 to 15. So we've done that. And then Director Roth met and we talked about the proposal of the new full-time fire chief and would really like a community engagement program and plan to be developed and rolled out this spring to kind of have more fulsome talk with her community before a decision is made on that. So we have now have the chief scheduled to start July 1st, and we'll do that community engagement piece prior to making that decision and implementing that position. So those are kind of all the changes from the EA, the AV, the West Coast, all those meetings that we've sat through over the last couple of weeks. And I'm happy to take any questions on any of those items.
Any comments or questions? Or motions? Okay, Dr. Roth? I think it's at the bottom of the first page. Yeah, because it's just the recommendations that are contained in this. So.
I move that the committee of the whole recommend the Grant and Aid McLean Mill proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023-27 Alberta Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Haggard. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, please go ahead for item B.
Okay, so the second report is regarding the deferred grant and aid requests. So we have reached out and got some information. Unfortunately, we did invite a couple of these guys to come present today, but there was conflicts from everyone. So we provided the information. There is still time on the March 22nd if we would like to invite them to present, but I think we got the information you were looking for. So the four are the West Coast Inland Search and Rescue, the Port Alberni Marine Rescue Society, the Fur Park Village Eco Village Foundation, and the Bread of Life Society. So if we just want to discuss them one at a time, that would probably work best. So if that's okay, I'll start with the West Coast Inland Search and Rescue. So there was some discussion about what area they cover and how they go. So we actually got information from both the Alberni Valley and the West Coast Search and Rescue. So they do work together and they do help assist each other's areas and respond to mutual aid calls from the other areas. So their grant and aid request from the West Coast Inland Search and Rescue is for $6,000, and it's the same amount as it was in the prior year. And they were looking for, or last year's participants were all municipalities, electoral areas, as well as Topot puts in a contribution as well.
Dr. Siga? You need to unmute.
I'd like to move that the Committee of the Whole recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors award a grant and aid in the amount of $6,000 in 2023 to the West Coast Inland Search and Rescue Society. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Haggard. I'm wondering if there is another blank in that, Director Siga, in regards to the areas participating. Would it should be the same ones?
Yes.
Okay. And Kirsten, is that okay?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, so the next one is the Port Alberni Marine Rescue Society. And again, the question was kind of regarding the benefiting area of the service. So we did reach out to them and they respond to calls on the Alberni Inlet. And they say that the vast majority of the calls they responded to recently involve residents of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield. Sorry, and they are asking for $15,000 this year. Last year, we awarded them $6,000. And the participating areas last year were the city of Port Alberni, Bamfield, Beaufort, Sprout Lake, Beaver Creek, and Cherry Creek.
Director Ross?
I would like to move that the committee of the whole recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors award $6,000 grant name, or sorry, a grant name in the amount of $6,000 in 2023 to the Port Alberni Marine Rescue Society with the following areas participating. Just as,
Just the same ones.
yeah,
We can just say same ones. if
same
they're-
ones.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Okay, any further comments? Dr. Beckett, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I was about to make a comment based on $15,000, but given the motion, I am in full support of that award. Thank you.
Alrighty. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Please, Beth.
Okay, so the Fur Park, oh man, I copied and pasted and still have it as Fire Park. Sorry about that. So Fur Park and Echo Village Foundation are requesting $40,000 to get them towards their bus goal. So I did reach out. They are making some progress. They anticipate getting the full amount of the gap at this point within the year. I guess the Alberni Clayoquot Continuing Care Society will owe some money to the foundation. So they'll have some of that, as well as they have some investments that are maturing. So they are quite confident they can get there within the year. One idea from staff was that we make the money contingent on them getting the remaining funding, which means we would requisition the funds in 2023, but then we can hold the funds here until they get all of the remaining funding that's required and just not award it to them until they actually provide proof of the other funding. So just an idea for the board to consider.
Would that need to be included in a motion?
Yeah, so in the body of the report itself, I did add an amount and just added conditional to all other funding sources being confirmed.
Okay, as long as that's understood by the board, I think we're okay. Director Cote?
Thank you. I'd make a motion to deny this request, and the reason being that this is going to set a precedent. There's a number of care homes in our community, and they all do the same kind of fundraising for the same kind of provisions for their facilities, and I don't want to start funding for buses for all of their care homes this time. Thank you.
Okay, seconded by Director Roth. Any further comments? I do think that in the future, we could address these kind of concerns when we look at replacing grants and aid or lots of grants and aid with some sort of program or services approach, which we can discuss in July or something like that. But I think this is probably the right move. Director Silva?
Just to add on to what Director Cote said, that Rainbow Gardens is looking for a new bus too. So we're going to, where we're going with that one.
I didn't want to say that about
Yeah.
Sally use, but I knew that too. Director Boyko, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I share the same concerns as Director Cote. This is not just a potential for a one-off here. This could be expanded to, well, they got one, we need one, and it just doesn't stop at that point. So thank you very much.
Okay, and when we're talking about grants and aid, I think this is the type of thing that we have to be always vigilant about. So thank you for bringing this up. We need to edify these things into a policy at some point. It's becoming clear and clear after the 10 or so years I've been here. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, so the last one is from the Bread of Life Society, and the request amount this year is for $10,000. And they're wanting to put an awning on the front of the building. And I know there were some concerns about encouraging gathering on the 3rd Avenue side of their building. So she did provide some information, and I have provided that that's not their intent. They are still working on that section at the back to be more of a gathering spot, but did outline why they're looking for it. So happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions? I only had one. I don't know that it's relevant to the CRD, but it seems like this fits with the whole beautification process that the city was doing some years ago with awnings and that sort of thing. They still do it? Cindy, go ahead. Sorry, Director Silva, go ahead.
We put a pause on that and we're re-looking at how we're going to be doing beautification in our community and where we're going with that. So it's a pause.
You can really see the progress, though. It is going well. Okay, that being said, I think we should have a motion or not. Sorry, I think I've derailed things. Director Ross, go ahead.
I would move that the Committee of Whole recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors award a grant in aid in the amount of $6,000 in 2023 to the Bread of Life Society, with the following areas participating, being everyone.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Wendy.
Can I just clarify, so all participants or the same as last year, which was City of Port Alberni, Banfield, Beaufort, Sprout Lake, Beaver Creek, and Shade?
The same as last year.
Same
Sorry,
one.
well,
I'll write
Sorry, they
same one.
didn't do one last year, to clarify, but that's the area
Yeah.
that identified they support.
Yeah, City of Port Alberni, and that.
Not Long Beach. Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. If the City of Port Alberni is considering doing the beautification program again, I'm just wondering if we're contributing and we don't need to.
Oh, okay. I thought that's why Director Roth only put forward 6,000, because being like some portion. Director Haggard, do you have any sense of where things are going? Should we even be worried about what the city's doing?
I don't think so. I think Director Solda is right. We're just pushing pause because the demand for the facade improvement program hasn't been as great as it has been. So we're looking at trying to do things a little bit differently. So I don't know what that's going to look like in the future. But the Bread of Life does extremely good work in our community for very little money. So I would support this.
Any further comments, Director Cote?
Thank you. I used to sit on a committee for the community forest, and this would be an excellent project for the funding that comes from the community forest. We used to contribute to projects that would benefit the Alberni Valley and all people, and I think that this is what this would do. So at present, I'm not really excited about contributing to this when I think that there's other areas where funding could be provided. Thanks.
Terry, how does revenue from the CFAs work? Is that something that we could receive revenue for a specific purpose if it's okay with the CFA board, and then put it here so that it's kind of net zeroed out?
So we actually at the regional district don't have, maybe we had an appointed member, but we don't have any involvement in the community forest. It is done through the city. And I'm actually not sure if they've had an intake for proposals, because I think they used to kind of do like their own kind of grant and aid process, and that's how places applied, but I haven't heard of one over the last year. So I'm not sure where they're at with that.
Yeah, like Hueyat's part of the CFA, but we have Banfield members, not Banfield being members. So I don't know how that works exactly, but Cindy, did you have any comments?
Well, the CFA has a little amount of money that they do award to different groups and organizations. And then a big check comes to the city, which is great because we utilize it in a different area. So I can't give you any more than that. So because I don't sit on that particular committee, but they do have money to allocate to organizations.
We should do a survey of potential revenue sources for coordination in the future, but I don't think it's a solution now. Terry, did you have a comment?
my only comment was we could defer this one again, and I could reach out and see if we could get some information from the community forest and if they're going to have an intake, just to provide another option for them, or yeah, that might be, I don't know. I don't even know who to contact, so I don't know how much activity I'll get in the next week, but we could give it a try.
Cindy, or sorry, Director Ross?
Can I withdraw my motion because it wasn't seconded?
I thought it was. It was. Yeah, I think you can withdraw it with the prevention of Deb. Is that okay to withdraw it? Okay. Do you want to just defer this to the next meeting? Okay, you have to move that.
I'll move to defer this to the next meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thanks. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay. Oh, yes, maybe you do. Do you want to dip right now?
Yeah, can I declare?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks.
I've done it too. Like there were presentations about Sawakin. I'm like, oh crap, I gotta go. Yeah.
What are we moving?
I
I'm
think
just
it's
sorry, I'm
the,
just confused. What?
The
The
double dipping
okay.
thing.
So the double dipping, District of Tofino and District of Ucluelet, I just got information back from your staff yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to find out if there's any double dipping formally, so I will bring that back to the 22nd. My understanding is some of the organizations you've awarded to maybe are going to your councils as well, but for different projects, which at that point I will be recommending or suggesting that you could do a motion such as this to kind of basically say that you're okay with them double dipping and remove that part of the policy. But the motion today is based on the community investment program, I think the city calls theirs. So these three organizations, the Port Alberni Association for Community Living, Sage Haven Society, and Alberni District Welfare have also applied to the city. Most of these are facility rentals. I think Sage Haven is for like bus passes and rec passes. So not for the same intent, but our policy just states that you can't double dip. It doesn't state that it has to be for the same thing. So just asking the committee to consider waiving that portion for these organizations.
Based on the fact that they're different projects. Okay. I think this will be the last motion for me, Deb, if you want to take over after this. Well, you don't have to move yet. Do we have a motion, Dr. Silva?
I'll move that recommendation.
Thank you. Do we have
Do
a
you want the whole
seconder?
thing read or you're okay?
No, I think we all know what it is.
Super.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Cote. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. All right, we're just going to pause quickly while I pack up my computer and stuff and go get ready to bank. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so Chair Jack has left, so I'm going to be taking over for a few minutes while he does his telephone call. So next on the agenda is the 2023 to 2027 draft financial plan for region-wide services. So Terry, do you want to speak on this, please?
Sure. Okay, so these are the 4 services that we haven't had a chance to discuss since the initial plan presentation. So I will just share screen for the slides from before and we can briefly talk about them and then happy to take any questions. Okay, so the first one is the emergency 911 telephone service. So this budget has actually changed. It's gone up by $4,000 since I initially presented it. That is because the North Island 911 made some changes to their budget. They haven't actually adopted their budget yet, but they don't anticipate any more changes to their proposed plan. So their board will adopt this later this month, I think near the end of this month. So I have reflected that increase in their operating costs from 370 to 374. We are anticipating some increased costs next year as we get ready for that next gen 911 that's going to be implemented in 2025. There will be probably some GIS mapping, house numbering work that needs to be done. However, we did recently see from the province that it sounds like they're going to be dedicating some funding towards this project, which is good news because this is not just information from us, but all of our member municipalities and nations. So still trying to figure out how that's going to be done, whether that'll be North Island 911 doing the work or if all of the members will be. But we were happy to see some grant funding looking like it may be coming our way to help with that. So just a small adjustment for this year, and I'm able to answer any questions.
Any questions for Terry? Director Beckett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As your board representative on the North Island 911 board, I support this small increase and would make the recommendation that the Committee of the Whole recommend E911 telephone system proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023-2027 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Thank you. Second by Director Solda. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Go ahead, Terry.
All right, so the next up is general government. So this is a large increase in it, and there's a number of things going on in this service, including some resource requests. But the highlights for the year really include trying to get the communications program fully implemented. We hired a communications program or coordinator in 2022, and really we're at a point now where we want to provide some structure to how this communications program is being delivered. So we're working together to get that. There's some changes to some legislation, including the FOIPA legislation. And then there's two initiatives that are in here that are kind of outside of our normal core business. One is the primary care recruitment and retention feasibility study for $75,000. And the other one is the looking at this building and what the future of this building is. And are we going to continue to operate out of this building? It is getting tight and is aging. So where are we going to be 10 years from now with this building? So we have $125,000 budgeted for that. I built this report with a couple of options, just as if people were looking to reduce the tax requisition. We could defer on the primary recruitment and retention project. However, it has kind of started and has some legs under it, I would say. So it would take a bit of work to slow that down, but we could defer that to next year is an option for $75,000 if the directors are looking. The other thing is we could make it contingent on grant funding. That provincial grant money, we are kind of led to believe is not going to have a whole lot of restrictions on it. So we may potentially be able to use it for kind of these one-off projects that are not like long-term, but just a one-off to determine where we're headed. However, at this time, we don't have any indication of this. Like this would be it would have to be fairly unconditional for this to meet the criteria, but that is an option, or to just make this project grant dependent on grant funding. In terms of the building project, as we are talking about the climate action funding and what we're doing with that, we have put $168,000 worth of the climate action money that we're getting from the province through regional planning, but not really with a plan yet. We just kind of have a project expense in it because we have to develop fully that plan after we develop a climate action plan. But as we started talking about what the work around this building was, we realized that a good portion of that is really a climate focus. And so we were suggesting that we could reallocate 50,000 from regional planning to general government to support this project. So it would result in that being reduced by $50,000. There would not be an offset increase in costs in regional planning because we basically would remove that component of the funding request. So that's another option that I've listed on page 26 for you. And I guess the one last item that we have on the slide is we are continuing to upgrade our IT and our security and are needing to try to stay on top of all the potential security cyber hazards that are part of life now. So really making sure we have continue to focus on that because it changes every day. And happy to answer any questions about the service.
Thank you, Terry. CEO, did you want to add anything to what she said? No, you're good. Okay. Director Boyko had a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. With regard to primary care doctor recruitment, there's a story in the CBC 2 days ago. Deficit of doctors is pitting Newfoundland communities against each other. So what they're happening is the same thing all over Canada. There's a shortage of doctors. Now they're offering additional money and land for doctors to get physicians to the region. It seems like there's a cat and mouse game where we'll give you this, we'll give you this, we'll give you this, and where does it stop? So there has to be some line in the sand where we can't offer the world, but at the same time we need doctors. So I don't know what a good balance is. Thank you.
Dr. Roth, or did you want to speak to that, Danielle? Or?
I think this is the intent of the work that we have started here in the Valley is to make sure that what we are looking at in order to attract and retain physicians and primary care providers is actually complementary and something that is going to add greater value than just that one segmented area. And there's a lot of players in the field, so that's what makes it a little more complex. So this is what we've started, and we do have a group of primary care providers right now that we've had our first meeting with, and we've started scoping out what the project would include. So it's early days, but your comments are not on deaf ears, and that is exactly why it is that we're exploring this, so we don't end up just being another Me Too and in essence throwing money to the wind.
Did you have any other comments, Director Boyko? Are you good?
No, I think it is what it is. I mean, we need to get more doctors, but now we're spending taxpayer money from ACRD to attract people to ACRD. The other regional districts and other cities are spending taxpayer money to do that, and we're spending a lot of taxpayer money to spend more taxpayer money. It almost sounds like an endless cycle. I just hope there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Roth, and then Director Beckett.
I would like to move to defer the $75,000 until next year for the primary, what is it called here? Primary care portion that was talked about.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Director Silva. Director Beckett, you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you very much. With respect to, sorry, let me back up a little bit. I know that Ms. Fong is acutely aware that I'm concerned about a 22% increase for our community. So we do have to look at every request very, very carefully. I think when it comes to the primary care and recruitment request, like Director Boyko, I guess while I feel that this is more of a provincial matter and to some degree a federal matter, I recognize how important it is to the community. And my comments were going to be, as long as we can see some tangible results and can identify what those tangible results are, then I guess I would be in favor of it. And as Daniel has alluded to, the meetings with the doctors, and you've got things going, which is great. But I just want to make it clear that I am very concerned about finding ways to reduce the tax increases, not just for Banfield, but for other communities within the ACRD. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Solda.
I would agree that it's a provincial matter, and although locally we have to look at it too, we did it in the past with Save Our Services. If everybody remembers, there was such a big overhaul. The city was actually looking at how do we recruit our doctors? What do we do? Wine, dine, and everything. We even had, I was on part of with the ABICC and other boards in the province to recruit doctors. And there was a doctor that they recruited for in Victoria, but we had to find a job for his wife who was into the music scene, and there was nothing for her. So of course he didn't come. When I talked to my son and asked him if he's going to come back, he's an internist in Louisiana. If he's ever going to come back, he says, Mom, the hospital system here is broken. The whole medical system, it's broken. And why would we come back? All these doctors that are from our country come back because they make a lot more money. Yes, the government has recruited and given a $300,000 raise increase to the doctors, but you Canadian, he makes $325,000 US. So why would he come back? And he doesn't have any overhead. So that goes all into his pocket while the government takes part of it. So why would you come back? So they're trying, I feel that the doctors, what's happening here is the province is trying to capture all these new doctors coming out of school. And of course, when you're in school and you've got a $500,000 student loan, which my son did, you're going to snap up the job, right? So until you find out what's happening. And we had Dr. DeWitt as an example. Now, he recruited a doctor from Alberta, Dr. Johnson, and Dr. Johnson's so overwhelmed with patients. He's got 3,000 patients, and normally you're only supposed to have like a quarter of that. So he's finding it really overwhelming that the nurse practitioner is in his office at times. So there's a lot more to this whole thing. And will our little bit of dollars help? I don't think so. I think it has to come from a bigger picture, and we have to have a voice. And I think that's really important. And through the ABICC, FCM, through our own communities, and that. So I see a lot more in this picture, and I send my son everything that comes out from the province just to see where they're going. Not knocking that it's not happening in the US. The US is having shortages too, just to put it out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Saban, and then Director Becca.
Hi, thank you. I think it's critical at this point to have this planning done because there is federal funding coming down the pipe to deal with healthcare, and having this research already done and a direction to go with this improved funding, I think is pretty critical. Now, we're talking about a system in Canada that does need revamping. There's no question about it. The US system has integrated various levels of care, right from RNA-1s up to RNA-5s up to nurse practitioners. And the Canadian system has not done that. And that's where you get your cost effectiveness. So I think that this funding that we have to look into what our options would be is critical because it gives us an opportunity to perhaps include some of these different levels of care that will decrease the onus on the physician as the single point of care entry point. I think the single point of care entry point hasn't worked for years. this is an opportunity to look at multiple points of entry into the healthcare system as opposed to overburdening the physicians themselves. So I am in support of doing this initial research. And I think in the long run, it will allow us to better utilize the funding that is coming down the line. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Beckett and Director Cote.
Thank you. Great comments and from everyone. And to Director Roth's motion, I'm wondering if Director Roth would be open to an amendment, a friendly amendment, whereby, given the work that's being done, given the comments from Director Siga, which are valid, having something in place, almost like a shovel-ready approach with respect to potential grants and money coming forward. What about a portion of that money being allocated so we can continue this work and look for other sources of funding for 2024? So I guess what I'm proposing is, if we came up with $35,000 this year to continue the work, would that allow us to be shovel ready? Would that allow us to continue to move forward? So I'll stop there.
Did you want to respond to that, Daniel, or do you want everybody else comment first? Okay, Director Cote, then Director Roth.
Thank you. I support this recommendation for the $75,000. I think that it's taken a lot of years. I've known for many years on this board that there was going to be a problem, and it was getting worse every year with all the retirements of the doctors. We've known that, and we haven't done anything about it. Things have gotten worse, and yes, the health system is broken, but I don't think that if we just step back and say, get the province to fix this, that we're actually helping the situation at all. I think that we do need to participate, as been identified here. I think it's very important for us to see what our community, maybe there's a pilot project, I don't know, something that we can do. I do like the idea of waiting and maybe seeing if the granting that's coming forward could be used for this project. So there is time still to have it in the budget, but pull it if need be at the end. So I'd like to leave it in the budget at this point. Thanks.
Director Roth. Director Sager, do you have your hand up? Did you want to speak again? Okay, thank you. Head, Director Roth.
Yeah, well, I see that we're going to receive a grant for the $1.83 million. And it may be that this might not be a project that could be included, but it may be that it could be. So I agree with Bob Beckett that we should reduce or change the motion to reduce it to 30,000 or 35,000, whatever he said. And that the remainder be subject to the conditions of the grant, the one that we were just notified that we would receive, or another grant.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to speak to this. Everybody else has had a turn. I met with Minister Osborne last Friday, and she said, I hope you realize that Island Health has literally moved heaven and earth to keep your ER open. They bring in physicians from out of town, so our ER does not have to close. I think it's over 40% of our doctors right now are at retirement age, or we will be at retirement age the next 5 years. So think about that. We're already at a doctor shortage. We're critical. And if half of those doctors retire, we're going to be in really big trouble. And I don't think it's the province's job to tell doctors to go to Port Alberni. Their job is to work with the medical system. It's our job to attract doctors to our community.
So I won't be supporting, I want to keep the $75,000 in the budget as well. It's critical. Director Rock.
Do we have a service area for this?
CEO?
We don't, and this is why we're doing the exploration. So the 75,000 is allocated out of general governance for the purpose of exploring whether or not we could fit this or develop a type of service. And of course, if there was a service, we'd have to go through the public process for endorsing that. And this is simply gathering the right information to create the structure to have that discussion and outreach.
Okay, so do we have to second the amendment to the motion, Wendy?
For clarification, so right now the motion on the floor is that the committee of the whole defer the primary care recruitment funding in the amount of $75,000 allocated in general government services in 2023 until 2024. So that's the motion that's
Okay.
been moved and seconded.
Okay, so are we going to leave it at that, or did you want to amend your motion, Director Rock?
I would like to amend it to what Bob Beckett suggested, that $35,000 for this year, and to make the remainder contingent on grant funding.
So do we have to have a seconder for the amendment?
I think the cleanest way would be maybe to vote on the first motion because they're quite different and then do a second
Okay.
one. So right now, if we could just vote on the one to defer. That might be easier than trying to amend.
But the original motion on the floor is deferring the full 75 to 2024, and that's not what they want to do anymore now. They want to keep 35
Correct.
in 2023, I believe. So,
Yeah, I think it's cleaner just to,
vote on it.
I wanted to keep that. Yeah.
Okay, so everybody understands that the motion on the floor is to defer the $75,000 to 2024. So we can defeat the motion and go on to the next motion. Is that clear? Okay. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion defeated. Kim McEwen?
Just for clarification, the 1.8 million grant money is really meant for infrastructure, and I'm not sure that that would qualify for this primary care, just for clarification.
Thank you, Director McEwen. Director Cote?
Thank you. I'd make a motion that we proceed with the $75,000 within the budget. And right, I'll just leave it at that because we can always pull it later. Thank you.
Thank you. Second by Director Solga. No. We defeated the first
Yeah, so we
motion.
dealt with the first one, so then we were open to new motions. So the first one was defeated, so now we're open to new motions, so Director Cote just made the motion.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so everybody understands what's on the floor now to keep the $75,000 for doctor recruitment strategy in the budget for this year. All in favor of the motion? Okay, any opposed?
No, it's fine now, so I'll record all those in favor and all opposed. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is carried to keep the $75,000 in the budget. Thank you.
So the other option was that the building and using that climate action money for 50,000. So it doesn't change the scope of the project, just changes potentially how we're funding it and then what other initiatives that may come out of that climate action plan when we get it developed, what we could kind of proceed with that. So that's the other suggestion that staff have put forward as a potential option.
Any comments or questions? So we're on. Sorry, Terry, I'm kind of lost. Where are we? We're on the building.
Yeah, so if you do not want to put any of that climate money towards that project, then we can just move on. If you would like to do that, then the proposed motion is on the bottom of page 26. I can read it out if it is something the directors are considering. No. Okay, so yeah, do you want me to read it, or do you have it?
I can make the motion on the bottom of page 26. That the committee of whole amend the regional planning and general government services to be included in the 2023-27 Alberta Park Regional District Financial Plan as follows. Reallocate $50,000 of climate action grant funding from regional planning to general government and reduce the associated climate projects budget in regional planning by $50,000.
Seconded by Director Solda. Director Beckett.
Disregard, Madam Chair. Thank you. I'm good with that.
Thank you. All in favor? Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, so now we are moving on to the regional park service, and I'm hoping Jenny's going to pop up and I'll put the screen up.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jenny.
Thank you, and thank you, Terry. Just wait till we've got the sheet up here. Okay. So as we've overviewed before, we have our regional park service, which includes the West Coast Multi-Use Pathway, the Log Train Trail, as well as Mount Arrowsmith, China Creek, Alberni Inlet. And in our park service in 2023, we've been working on the West Coast Multi-Use Pathway, which we now all know we have grant funding for, so we're going to be proceeding with that. We're going to be moving forward with the Log Train Trail Park Management Plan, more engagement. We have a plan coming up in this next month and looking to have a finalized plan and vision for that trail by the end of the year. Continuing to work on park signage guidelines and incorporating First Nations input. We're also looking at our operating. A point of note is that our operating and capital renewal costs are going to be increasing because we obviously have increased and aging infrastructure. So it is something to keep in mind as well when we are looking at new infrastructure and expanding our park system, because we want to make sure we are putting money away for the asset management. Next slide, Terry.
I think that's the only slide you have on regional parks.
Fantastic. Happy to answer any questions.
That was short and sweet. Director Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Jenny. I just had a quick question about the survey results for the parks. So on page 35 of what we received was a thing that said basically 80% of people want to keep the same level of service and no tax increases or no increases in service. Is that correct that I'm reading that? Thank you.
Yeah, I'd have to pull up the, actually, we're working right now on the annual parks report. So we're going to be looking to providing that information. When we did the Log Train Trail Park Management Survey, we took the opportunity to talk a bit, or to ask, I should say, on the online survey about general levels of service, because that's a question for us. We have a lot of flexibility within parks, it not being an essential service. Should we be increasing the level of parks? Should we be decreasing the level of service? You know, you can let parks be very, very natural, or you can maintain them to a high degree. There's lots of different levels. So it's really interesting, the results that we got back. In retrospect, I think that we need to, we have so many different parks, so many different types of parks. We've got trails, we have parks like Cougar Smith Park, which is like a high level of service. And even our trails can look different from one section that's high use to another section that's lower use. And so the results that we got are a good indicator. It's good information, but it depends what someone's thinking about when they're answering that survey question. And we were fairly generic in our asking. And so the information I think was positive because a lot of people are either happy with the level of service that is being received and the amount of money that's getting put towards it, as well as a mix of, like willing to spend more money for higher levels of service. And I think in local government, that is always the key when we talk about levels of service, is that there is a certain amount of cost that is associated with higher demands and higher service levels.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Is there any other questions?
Oh, so-
Did you
I
have
was just gonna say something else. Sorry, there's a delay, sorry. Jenny, I know there's an upcoming, another log train trail management thing that will be happening in the next couple of weeks. When you have the public stuff ready, can you let us know so we can make sure we have good engagement and share it? Thank you.
And through the chair, I will use this as a public announcement opportunity. Thank you very much, Director Boyko. We are looking to another engagement on the March 26th, and anyone who is interested in participating in that public engagement is welcome to contact us. It's going to be a World Cafe style, so we are going to be asking the public who's interested to register so that we are able to manage the number of people we have, and if we need to host more than one session, we will. We're going to be advertising in the newspaper, on social media, on our website, and everywhere else, and now at the Committee of the Whole meeting. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the plug. Director Cote.
Thank you. I think I'm lost. Page 37, is that the budget that we're discussing right now?
Just one sec,
Yeah.
sorry.
Because there's nothing under engagement or expenses.
So the projects for these are actually budgeted through project expense. So operational planning. So we're doing all the park management plans under the category of operational planning. So the bottom line, and category 269.
Okay. Could I also ask labor and benefits? Is that staffing time or other?
Yes, staff time.
That's a big increase. So just thinking.
Jenny, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So with the regional parks, we have had an increase in staffing. We do use a lot of grants, grant time. So we have our new grant coordinator, asset management coordinator, whose time is going to help us out with this, which does help a lot because in consequence, we have been very successful with grant applications. So we got a grant for the Log Train Trail. We also recently got money for the Sprout Lake Active Transportation Plan. So I think although we are seeing labor go up a little bit, it's going to be leveling off. And I think that the benefit we're receiving in this service is we're basically leveraging that staff time to get a lot of money going into the service is my summary.
Yeah, if I could add to that. So we will have procurement time with the West Coast Multi-Use Path this year. We also, now that we got that funding, have made a promise to the board to come back to discuss governance of the Regional Park Service, which is some senior finance time, senior administration time. So there's going to be a lot done in addition to the Log Train Trail Park Management Plan, which is also a big project this year. So as you see, it drops again next year. We don't anticipate that continuing forever. It is kind of that bulk of that governance work as well that needs to be addressed in 2023.
Any final questions or comments? Dr. Solda?
I'll move that the Committee of the Whole recommend the Regional Parks proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023-2027 Alberta Cape Regional District Financial Bylaw Plan bylaw.
Second. Seconded by Director McEwen. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Go ahead, Terry.
I'll speak to these ones if that's okay.
Thank you.
So just a quick overview again of regional planning. So just for everybody's information, within our department, we have regional planning, rural planning, building inspection, and bylaw enforcement. So regional planning is a separate service from rural planning, as building inspection is also a separate service. And then we'll speak to the regional component now. So the first slide here just is an overview of the day-to-day work we do as far as referrals and applications. So those are managing subdivision referrals. So within all regional districts, the subdivision approving officer resides at the Ministry of Transportation. We do a lot of work in coordination with them through referrals on projects. This also includes agricultural land reserve applications, as well as other miscellaneous applications regarding provincial crown leases, mining referrals, etc. And I just want to note that, the subdivision development end, has continued to be very active and busy. We can just go to the next slide, Terry. If there is one. Great, and just an overview of some of the priorities. One of the main focuses has been the agricultural initiatives through the implementation of our agriculture plan. So this service, or in this area, we actually have 3 separate committees. There is an agricultural advisory committee, which deals with mainly agricultural related development applications and ALR applications. We have an agriculture development committee, which oversees the economic development components of agriculture, and managing what has been a very successful grant administration program. We receive a lot of grants for this program. One that's noteworthy is we're in the middle of a 3-year project funded by the Vancouver Foundation, and the total grant for that is $300,000, so $100,000 per year for a systems change project. We do work on the West Coast. There is a coastal roundtable that looks at agriculture and non-traditional agriculture on the West Coast, and our goal in this year is to expand those initiatives and get some attention into Bamfield as well. So I think that sums that up. If there's one more slide. No, okay. So I do want to also touch on dispersed camping. The CIO and I participate in that work, and it's funded through this service as well. As Terry had mentioned, there's some local government climate action initiatives and that we're going to be working through here, as well as it mentioned in the agenda. In the budget includes a sustainability planner, which would deal with both the climate action work as well as the agriculture initiatives. The contractor that we're using for the agriculture work is wanting to make some changes and reduction of work. So that would just be a shift in the costs on that. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions, Director Cote?
Thank you. Unfortunately, I lost my agenda and all my notes. So I'm going through this again, but I think I saw that you're wanting to combine the agricultural work funding person with the climate action to one position?
Yes.
So does that mean that we will no longer be having a contract with the agricultural support worker?
Not necessarily in the same way that this role would manage the administration of some of the grant applications, sort of the day-to-day management of the ag development committee, helping set up and run the meetings would be done that way, and then part of it is dependent if the grants continue to come in. There certainly would be some work with with an option for working with consultants and contractors, and it could be some of the same people that are doing that.
I've lost it in my notes, but it sounded like it was one person to do those 2 jobs.
Yes, that would be correct.
So is that an extra person then in the office that's
Yes. that would
taking
be-
that on? Removing some of the, so we would still be working with the agricultural contract
So the
contract workers?
more on a project basis. So they would like, so the agriculture support workers that we've had have run and managed, like all of it, the administration, managing the committee work, et cetera. So they've indicated to me that they want to, the current contractors don't want to be doing that work anymore and are looking for a shift. So this would be a new position, funded through the climate action funding that we have, as well as the portion of that's allocated in regional planning for the ag support work under sustainability, to manage the administration of the what the ag support workers did before.
I'm sorry to drag this on. I'm just concerned that we're creating a position within the regional district that a contractor was doing in the past, and taking all of that on with minimal support from the regional district. And I'm just wondering if this is just a contract. This is a big change for us. I don't see that there would be that much work that if it was done by a contractor on a part-time position. I don't think that it's a 50% 0.5 full-time position. Sorry, I'm having a hard time.
Go ahead, CEO.
I can add to that. The marrying of the two positions is an element of ag, but the lion's share is the climate work. And the climate work we have not been doing, and the climate work is going to cost us grants if we don't start doing it. So we don't have targets, we don't have the sustainability plan elements, and all of that we have to start flushing out to meet the provincial targets. All the conversations we've had with the grant funders is that if we don't actually have these targets and strategies in place, then we will not be able to report. And by default, in an inability to report change, we will lose out on grants. So the lion's share of that new position is on the climate work. And then the carryover is because the contractor for agriculture is saying that they want to hand off that portion. Now, we don't think that agricultural work is going to disappear at the end of the Vancouver Foundation grant. And so we do think that there'll still be a lot of community coordination, community groups, and certainly there'll be ongoing lobbying and having a small portion of staff time dedicated to support the whole region and rural areas in particular, along those agricultural planning initiatives is important.
Thank you, Daniel. Director Boyko?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I also share some concerns about we're sprinkling climate action, climate change money just here, and we're going to put some into a new building now. And it's like we're using it, just sprinkling it in different places to increase our overall spending with the grant money. But with regard to greenhouse gas emissions, I'm just reading the Beaufort OCP, and we're already back in 2007, we had a measurement of how many greenhouse gas emissions. So what you're saying now is the federal government is going to monitor our emissions, the provincial government, and now the ACRD has to measure the same thing. So we're measuring the same thing 3 different times, using taxpayer money 3 times to get the same information. Now we have to report it all to ourselves now. Is that what's going to be happening in the future? Thank you.
CEO?
I can't speak to all of the historic elements, but certainly there's been various disjuncted approaches at the provincial federal level in terms of measurements. I can say to that. Our initiatives when it comes to CO2 emissions have really been focused on alternative transportation approaches and the creation of those viable alternatives, whether that be increased transit, whether that be trail development. Has really been on the angle of infrastructure development, and that's really been supported at a federal and provincial level, even though they're collecting the stats. Now we've already gone down the path where we're hiring somebody to help us with the measurement of our CO2 emissions, specifically looking at our fleet and buildings, So we do have to start collecting our own. That is different than our ability to collect, vehicle or passenger transportation elements. We're not gearing up to collect that in any particular way, to my knowledge. So we're really looking at our basis first. And so the sprinkling, as you said, of the different areas is our biggest impact, and our biggest building is the one we have here. And so if we are going to build for the future, whether that's a new building or something different, that strategy is going to be a portion of what we're looking at, which is why we recommended tying it into the climate change. The larger climate change plan is really what we have to come out with, and that's going to take the better part of this year to flush out. And so those are the two primary areas that we're looking at this year in the development of a climate change strategy. Of course, all of that has to link to what federal and provincial governments are setting out as priorities. The BC plan is the plan we're working towards. So the Clean BC plan is really what we're trying to mesh in with. If Mike has any additions to that, go for it. But that is my knowledge of what 2023 is looking at.
Did you want to add anything, Mike? You're good? Okay, Director Cote?
Thank you. I don't understand climate change initiatives yet. So I'm wondering why this isn't just a contract for a short period to gather that information rather than a long time position. So why is it not just a contract?
Can you respond, CEO?
Yeah. This is really about changing and interfacing with our existing plans as well. And so it's not a short-term create and carry on. It really is about an ongoing effort that the organization is going to have to not only commit to, but report on. And it's going to take multiple years to lace everything in. And the direction that we've had and the comments that we've had from the province is, as they come out with their targets that we have to report on and that we have to implement at a local level, the comments from local governments have been, well, how are we supposed to do this? And the comments back from the province is, we shifted from, in our case, a $3,000 a year climate change grant to an $83,000 a year climate change grant. So they said, when it comes to how, that's how. You choose how you use your annual money, but that's what's coming in, and we expect you to report and hit those targets. So because that is really becoming something core to our day-to-day business, rather than go down and have a contractor that subsequently builds relationships and then leaves, we want to see this integrated into our core activities, and the majority of it at this point is fully funded by the province.
Go ahead.
Sorry to drag this on. So we have incorporated layers into our way of business with things like social procurement. So I'm just wondering why it's, I don't understand yet what the benefit for grants down the road. I don't know what grants we'd be trying to obtain by, having this person.
CEO?
Right now, all of our most significant grants going through UBCM or the province or the federal government are asking us to start reporting on the impacts with regards to climate change. It's an ongoing theme for them and everything that they're doing, and we're simply not equipped right now because we can't say that we're hitting any of our targets because we haven't established any targets. We can't say whether or not we're having a net positive impact on our greenhouse emissions, a CO2 footprint, because we don't have a benchmark. And so all of this has to come into play, and that is the subject of a separate contract. So that contract is being issued or has been issued, and we're going to get that baseline. But from there, we then have to speak regionally on everything that we're doing. When we look at our airports, we look at our water system, our trail systems across the region, the buildings we have, the fleet that we implement. All of that is going to be ongoing work. And then furthermore, I know when we finish the process of zoning bylaw and our associated OCP connections to that zoning bylaw, then we're going to have a comprehensive OCP review, and that is going to have to start interfacing with climate and sustainability targets. And again, if we don't have those targets, it's hard to lace in. So it is really core to what we do, because all of these plans are central to our day-to-day work.
Go ahead, Penny.
Thank you. So I'm wondering, when we took on asset management, we started out with a contract, a term of employment. And I'm wondering why. I'd like to see us do that with this also. At the end, we probably will have a full-time position. But right now, I don't understand what it is that at the end of finding out what our goal or what we have at present. I don't understand what we will have at the end once this first part of the project is completed. So I just feel more confident doing it in that manner rather than just jumping in and hiring a new employee. It's the previous board that always minded on the we don't really want to create a position long term when we can do something short term and then evaluate. And I understand your point of get somebody in and then we leave, but I feel more confident moving forward that way. Thank you.
I'm just going to make a quick comment if I can intervene here. One of the province's highest priorities is climate change and environmental stewardship. So we're going to have to get on board, because they're not going to be changing their mind anytime soon. That's the way they're going. So we have to get on board. CEO, and then Director Borko, then Director Seda.
Thank you. And it's fair we can look at contract work, but we do feel that we have the better part of a full-time position for a full year. To hire a contractor to do that will be twice the cost as bringing on any employee. And like I said, the downside to the twice the cost, above and beyond everything else, is that the relationships and the intimate knowledge to how it all interfaces to our systems will also be lost at the end of that contract. Because rarely do contractors say, I loved it so much, I'm going to take the 50% pay cut and stay as an employee. And so we really feel that there's a greater benefit to building this internally as a staff. It's lower cost. It'll be a more intimate connection with the planning, and it'll give us a better interface for some of the more casual training that needs to happen across the organization with other employees. It's a bit similar to the debate that we've had around, remote workers or in-office workers. And when things are core to the organization, this is where we want people to be in the organization, because those informal connections really create a lot of organizational value.
Thank you, Daniel. Director Borko?
Yes, thank you, Chair. One thing to note is the federal government has had greenhouse gas emission targets in place for many years, since the Paris Climate Accords and other things, and has consistently never met any objectives. So how realistic is it for the ACRD to say, hey, we're going to reduce gases 10% by using the things on the Clean BC website? So for example, I'm on there right now. Electrify your house, your car, your charger, your motorbike, your scooter, and your bike. And basically that's their answer for everything. And we have large power outages here. Like I'm working in Tofino right now. Last week we had one for 20 hours and we've had 4-day outages here, and that would basically shut down this entire area. Is there any other thoughts that are going into this? Thank you.
Mike or Daniel?
And I think that is part of what we would be looking at and what those alternatives are. Because I'm aware that the province provincially they're aware of the differences between rural areas and urban areas, and how we can, our area specifically, we're talking about some of the more remote rural areas, how we can meet the climate targets, but still keep the power running. So that would actually be things that this position would be looking at and incorporating, and also providing myself and Daniel and the board with feedback to take back to the province so that, provincial policies make sense on the ground everywhere in BC.
Thank you, Director Sega.
Thank you. At the conference that I just attended, it was very clear that there were going to be very specific measurements. You need to show your climate change targets and what your outcomes are, and that whole measurable piece was going to become a real indicator of what kind of funding you're going to get. So, and the other piece of having a contractor versus somebody that's an integral part of the organization is that person will bring that climate change lens to every aspect of the organization if they understand the organization. For example, the sort and go and all of the benefits, the climate change benefits we're getting through the separation of our organics. That is a distinctly measurable piece that can be brought forward as an example of meeting a target change for a target for climate change. So I am in support of having somebody brought on board. And if they can wear two hats and two different lenses to look at the organization and support our future grant opportunities, I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? Would anyone like to make this motion? Director McEwen?
I will move that the Committee of the Whole recommend the regional planning proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023 to 2027 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Seconded by Director Sega. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Oh, you're opposing motion? Okay. Thank you. Okay, Terry, are we done with your part?
Yes, I think we are done with all the components.
Woohoo.
So yeah, we'll discuss
We're
this
getting
again
there.
as summary this afternoon.
Okay, so Wendy, is there any questions by email?
No, Madam Chair, we have no participants today online and no questions received to our email address.
Thank you. Could I get someone to make a motion to close the meeting to the public as per the Community Charter Section 91C, Labor Relations or Other Employee Relations? Moved by Director Cote, seconded by Director Keelan. All in favor? Any opposed?